Hey everybody, live from Chicago. It's Wednesday Whine with Belaval. Once again, we made it to the middle of the week. Thank you. And of course, let's toast to it. Cheers. It is called Wednesday Whine. I know that you guys are like, oh my God, English is not her first language. She's misspelled it. No. It's because I like to whine on Wednesday while I have a little bit of wine. And during the quarantine, I've enjoyed whining with you guys. So who's out there? Let me know that you're out there. And I'm going to do something different today. I'm going to share something on the screen with you. Bear with me because it's the first time that I work the switcher, like we say on TV. And I'm going to show you this amazing picture of my guest today. I hope you can see it. This is my guest, Mariana Van Zeller. And Mariana Van Zeller is one of the most courageous women I've seen in a while. Oh my word. Mariana is from Portugal. And I need to ask this woman what happened to her that she has this need to get herself into trouble. She is the host of a show that I'm obsessed with called Trafficked with Mariana Van Zeller. It's on NatGeo, National Geographic Television. And every Wednesday, she drops this bombshell on us. And she gains access to these underworlds that we can all fall victim to, but we don't know how they work. For example, I'm talking about, those phone calls that the elderly get. You can make $19 million, but send me 100,000 so I can secure it. Or fake bills, or fentanyl, that drug that's killing our youth here in the United States. Mariana was curious enough to go to the source of these illegal businesses. And somehow this blonde, petite woman gains the trust of these maleantes, as we say in Spanish. And when you see this show, your adrenaline is pumping. You don't know how many times I've screamed at my screen, Mariana, what are you doing? Mariana, don't get out of the car. Hi, Mariana. I sweat for her. So now you've seen her. I'm going to go back to the screen because I want to bring her in. Let me stop sharing. I'm trying to multitask, which I haven't done since college, and I flunked this class. Let me bring in Mariana Van Zeller. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Anna. I should start bringing you with me everywhere because that was the best intro I've ever heard.
I'm telling you, I am like the #1 advocate now. And people must be like, Anna, you like that scary stuff. And I'm like, my adrenaline is pumping. I love that kind of journalism. Mariana, you've been doing this for a long time. How did you find this niche, this beat?
Yeah, I've always been an incredibly curious person, and I am particularly curious about the most secretive and darkest corners of our world, I guess. Whatever areas that we don't usually get access, and when it's specifically subjects and issues that are relevant and that have a huge impact on our lives, whether that's guns or drugs or scams or steroids or wildlife trafficking. We might not know it, but all of these actually have an impact on our lives. We might have a fake $100 bill in our pocket right now and have no idea. So whenever, from a young age, I've been a very curious person and particularly curious about things that we usually don't get to see on our everyday lives.
But how do you gain, first of all, how do you gain access? And then how do you get their trust? Do you think it's the way that you approach them? Do you think it's the way you look? Do you think it's a combination?
I think it's a combination of all of that. I say it's partly ego on their part, wanting to talk, because these are some of the best of what they do. We hang out with some of the best counterfeiters, the best people making fake US dollars, some of the best cocaine or fentanyl chemists, drug runners and all of that. And their families sometimes don't even know what they do. So we give them an opportunity to sort of boast about their jobs and tell us what they're passionate about. And on the other hand, I would say impunity plays a large role in it too. In a lot of these areas, they've been able to operate with impunity for so long that they don't really see a downside in speaking to National Geographic. And then the third, I think the most important, it is very much the way that we approach the people that we speak to, which is a lot with empathy. I'm there not to judge. I'm there to listen to their stories. And I'm fully aware that for the rest of us, for the rest of society, these are the people that are considered sort of the bad guys. But I make it very clear, like, look here, I'm here to listen to your story. And I think that really goes a long way.
And where I saw it vividly is when you did, and I'm going to show this picture, and I apologize for the wonkiness of the system, but I want to show this picture that shocked me because, is it this one? Yeah, I think it's this one. No, I'm going to tell you about this one. This one freaked me out, Mariana, because can you see it? Yeah, you're going to see it right now. It's the one where you're sitting with this guy in Jamaica that in the middle of the interview, this is the first episode, everybody, go watch this. This guy in Jamaica tells you point blank, Mariana, I thought about mugging you when I saw you.
Yeah. And yeah, I believe him. I mean, that was what he initially had in mind, I think, was to steal, rob us and take our cameras. And he tells me this as we're filming. And part of the reason he says he didn't do it was because he realized that we're nice people. That's what he said. But he had such an interesting story about the reason why he scams, how he started scamming, how he moved from the drug business into scamming. And now he has all these people operating and working for him and how much money he makes out of it.
I have to say none of this is easy work, because I remember you asked a woman who does this, how many phone calls do you make a day? And she makes over 200 and maybe 2 are good enough.
Yeah, it is not on their part, definitely not easy work, but it's very profitable. Another woman scammer that we interviewed, Sweetie, who told us, how she can make she works in Montego Bay at a resort and a hotel, and how many Americans are coming to that hotel and tourists from all around the world, and they're spending more money in a day that she can make in a month working at the resort. And she came home one day and realized her grandfather was very ill, and the only way she could save him is to get him this expensive treatment, and then she turned to scamming.
Did it ever surprise you, one, how proud they were, and 2, how they justified it?
It was interesting that almost all of them talked about reparations. So it's this idea that it's sort of getting the money back that was stolen from them during the colonial times. And it's actually the scammer's anthem is called, one of the scammer's anthem, referred to as the scammer's anthem is called Reparations. And it's a very well-known song in Jamaica by an artist called Vibes Cartel. And it was super interesting to hear them talk about that. And also, talk about why they became scammers. Again, at the end of the day, I think I certainly had a very strong impression about these people on the other line. I've received dozens of these phone calls. I know people myself have been scammed. I'm fully aware of the impact and how awful it is what they do. So I definitely wasn't expecting to arrive there and hear some of these stories that I completely connected with and understood. I, hate the sin, but not the sinner.
Which I think it's something you said during the episode on fentanyl. And by the way, was that the one you were the most scared for your life? Because I noticed that at one point you said, I wanted to get out of there when he said we could all explode, right?
Yeah, that lab, the fentanyl lab where we saw them making stuff. And there's a moment, those are highly combustible and there's a lot of chemicals, incredibly dangerous. We were wearing a hazmat suit and mask and all of it. And we could still sort of feel it. It's so powerful. And you're seeing all this, chemicals being put together. It was like being in real life from Breaking Bad. And there's a moment where he starts mixing and I'm, thinking, I hope to God that this guy actually knows what he's doing, because one extra little piece of something and that whole thing could have exploded and we're right there. So it was
in the middle of nowhere too. Like no one knows where you are.
Yeah. That was sort of, definitely a hairy moment. I wouldn't say it was the scariest I was, but that was a hairy moment for sure. But
which one was the scariest? Which one was the scariest?
They were, I'll tell you the most uncomfortable moment for me, for sure, was when we filmed for the fentanyl story. We filmed this mule, a woman, actually, a female, who's pregnant, crossing the border from Mexico to the US, bringing, a car loaded with fentanyl. And I've been reporting on the opiate crisis for over 10 years. And I've seen, firsthand the impact that these incredibly dangerous drugs have on people, on Americans and my fellow citizens. And, spent so much time with mothers who've lost loved ones to fentanyl and other opiates. So being with her, right close to her as she's crossing the border and witnessing it. And on the one hand, I did not, quite frankly, want her to be caught because I'd spent the day before with her. I knew she had kids. I knew exactly what that would mean for her family. She's an American citizen, by the way, what that would mean for her family if she was caught. But on the other hand, I didn't want the drugs to go across. So I felt so torn, and at the same time felt so bad for not, I kept thinking that the family members that I'd interviewed were judging me at this moment. And it was really hard for me as a journalist, very hard moment.
See, but I think that's what makes you a good journalist, that you can empathize with both sides, that you can see both points. That's why it angers me when people compare us to like cable news and they're like, the media is biased and blah, blah, blah. Well, I've worked in this for 24 years. You've worked in this for 15 or 20 years, and we still can see both sides. It's a different kind of journalism. What people are comparing us to is not really journalism. What you're doing is showing both sides of the coin and informing.
I think that is one of the most important and most powerful tools that we have as filmmakers and as documentary filmmakers and as journalists too. We have the power of allowing people, even if just for a little bit, while they're drinking their wine or their beer at night, sitting on their couch with their family, to place themselves in somebody else's shoes. Because that is such an important thing to be able to do. And you can do that, I think if you give people the truth of where these people came from, what their life stories is, and you listen to their stories, I think you have a hard time not doing that.
Absolutely. Mariana, a question from my camera lady, Mary. Do you have security with you when you do these stories?
Sometimes, not always. And I'll tell you what, Mary, most times we don't. And I tell you why not. Because the most important thing in these situations and how we can stay the safest, in my opinion, is when we show people that we're with, that we trust them and that we respect and we trust them, and that we're not nervous or suspicious of them. Because if we are suspicious or we don't trust them, they won't trust us back. And in these moments, trust is everything. And it can really backfire if they start thinking that we don't trust them and they don't start not trusting us. So
yeah, I remember your conversation in Spanish when you went to do the counterfeit money, and how you kept telling them, because one of your contacts had failed to show up. And then when you finally got in, you were telling them in Spanish, don't worry about this. I've been doing this for a long time. I will protect you. And I think that the way that you said that, you gave them confidence to then give you carte blanche.
Yeah, we take that very seriously, not only because these are our sources, and as journalists, we know very well how important it is to protect our sources. They're also willing to sit down with us and share and open up their lives to us. So part of it is, disguising their faces, even changing their voices, and we go to great lengths to make sure that we don't.
Oh my God, do you? You go to huge lengths.
We do. And again, it's not only for their safety, it is also, quite frankly, for the safety of ourselves, the whole team, and the local journalists. Because I don't think people know, but the local journalists in many of the stories that we do, the international stories, are really the unsung heroes of our profession, of our industry. They are the ones who have been reporting on these stories at much greater risk, by the way, in countries like Mexico, for example, where people are being killed, journalists are being killed for reporting on the cartel and cartel violence. And so, we want to make sure, because we know that if these identities aren't disguised, it will eventually possibly fall on the shoulders of the local journalists.
Yeah, I'm trying to show a picture of you with the authorities. How much do you rely on the authorities? And could they subpoena you for this work? That was one of my producer friends' questions. Oh my God, will they come after her? What kind of protection does she have? And how much do you rely on them? How much of a source can they be?
We've worked with law enforcement throughout the series and throughout my career as a journalist also, when trying to see what it is like to try and stop and combat these black markets. And I think that's what's so interesting about, this series and my job making it, is that at one moment we're with the traffickers and the smugglers, and then suddenly the next moment I'm with those that are, trying to catch them. And yeah, I mean, we protect our sources very well. And I think there needs to be a clear separation, obviously, between the work of journalists and the work of law enforcement. However, it is my job as a journalist. I see it. It's very clear. It's to raise awareness and to shine a light. And if that's going to help law enforcement by watching my show, then so be it. Ultimately, what we want is to have an impact in the world. That's the best thing that we can do as journalists, right?
But have you ever been subpoenaed where you've
No,
been forced?
absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Okay, this is the other picture that I wanted to share because you need to explain this one to me. I don't think I've seen this episode. What episode was this?
So this was the Guns episode, and it's going to be the finale. It's a 2-hour special, and it's one of my favorites. If not, I think it's incredibly powerful. I mean, they all are. I can't really tell you which my favorite is, but this is very, very powerful. It is. There's a reason why it's 2 hours, is because of the incredible access we got, the insane things we were able to watch and see. We basically did follow the whole pipeline of guns, what's called the Iron River, from Los Angeles here all the way down to Sinaloa, Mexico, and the various stops along the way, and what they do to sort of go through checkpoints and all of that. And what is so interesting about this photo, Anna, which is very sad as well, is that there's another Sicario. We spent the day with 3 Sicarios. There's 2 in this photo, and there's another one on the side. Of these 3, 2 have since been killed. These were under 30. They were 20-something-year-old kids, mostly kids, and spending the time with them. Yes, their job is to kill people. They're gunmen, and that's what they do. They kill people with American firearms in most cases, which is what we were investigating. But what's so sad about it is, again, definitely not condoning what they do. It's horrific. They kill people. It's awful, and there's absolutely, no condoning it at all. But you listen to their stories and you understand where they came from, where they grew up, what is happening around them as they're growing up, the lack of opportunities, and that they know full well that they were going to be very probably killed before they're 30. You can't think for a second, okay, these are people that were born wanting to be Sicarios. I don't think that happened.
Right. Is there a moment where, because you ask them and you tell them, and I found that so interesting. You tell the man, what you're creating here can kill people on the other side of the border. And he says, I know, that's why I need to make the best product ever. And I was like, oh my God, how disjointed, right?
Oh, it's so crazy. Yeah. I ask all those questions always. Again, it's my job as a journalist to ask the hard questions. Even when dealing with the cartel or all these criminal organizations around the world, there are rules that they give us in terms of, protecting identities or not disclosing locations. But there's only once has there been rules about questions that I can and cannot ask. Actually, with the cartel, sometimes they will tell you ahead of time, like, it's not a good idea to ask them what cartel they belong to, for example. But yet, very rarely do I not also ask those questions, because those are, I don't ask them. It's not the first question I ask, but eventually, but I do ask everyone about if they realize the consequences of what they're doing. Whether that's overdosing or stealing money from people or scamming or whatever that is.
Yeah. I have found myself screaming at the TV every time you get in a car with someone who has taken your phone, yelling at you for getting out when the cops are breaking into houses. Mariana, por favor. Oh my God. Is anyone in your family telling you to stop it? Or they know you too well?
What the viewers don't get to see is the amount of training, the amount of planning, the amount of security meetings, everything that happens behind the scenes before we actually get there. So obviously we're trying to minimize the risk as much as possible. But this is the truth. This is what is happening around the world. And these black markets need to be explored.
I know. My camera lady, Mariana, be very careful. I can tell you have been in dangerous situations. Your eyes tell me you have seen a lot. I hope you're safe. Hi, my poor Mary. Linda says, I'm in awe of your bravery to research and document these dangerous and scary stories. I could never do it.
Oh, thank you, Linda. I thank you. It's I'm not sure if it's bravery when if I was afraid all the time, then maybe it would be bravery, but I am not. And I think part of it is whenever there's a battle in my head between sort of being afraid or being curious, curiosity sort of always wins. And sometimes that's not always a good thing, but mostly it's sort of allowed me to do my job.
Has the crew ever stopped you?
No, but there have been moments where there's been a reevaluation of the risk in the field where we stopped and talked about it. I'm definitely usually seen as the person that likes to do. It takes it always a step further. There are sometimes, and I'm so happy that I work with them because they are incredible. I mean, not only are they incredibly brave and awesome and great company, but they're incredibly talented. I mean, the show looks beautiful.
Oh my God, the show, we were talking off air. She has the best crew ever because she's constantly telling them it's less what they can shoot than what they can shoot, right?
Absolutely. I mean, these little details that they get and everything. You know, I was telling you, Anna, before we started, how my job as a journalist and as a host on this show is to truly go after the truth. What they're doing so brilliantly is that they're capturing the truth with these details and everything that they're capturing around them. They make it so beautiful at the same time. It's really incredible. Like, all kudos to them. They're amazing.
And the editing is unbelievable because for those of you who don't know, broadcast journalists have to write to video, right? The video tells the story, but a lot of times Mariana has to shut the camera down and tell you what the meeting was about. And the editors and the camera people who think about, okay, then let's shoot the empty restaurant. And with Mariana's storytelling, you don't miss a beat, you can see it. And it exercises your brain too, that we don't have to get everything fed.
Yeah, absolutely. The editors are some of the best out there for sure. They do incredible work where, you know, I was there, I filmed it. I mean, I was there while they were filming it. I know what this looks like. I know what we got. And then when we actually see it edited, it blows my mind how much better it looks.
It's you know, it's ironic because it's the underworld, but it is beautifully shot and edited. Pauline asks, are people afraid to leave once they work for these organizations?
Absolutely. I'd say that's one of the main reasons why people don't leave. I mean, it's partly the money and the lack of opportunities, and partly because they're afraid of leaving. You know, once you know too much, you know, even when, for example, in the drug trade all over the world, whether it's, you know, everywhere in the world, it's usually compartmentalized, and the person that's packing doesn't know the person who's actually smuggling the drug, doesn't know the person who's the chemist, it doesn't know the person that's picking up the precursor chemicals or all of that. And that's partly because people don't want to know. The more you know, the more you are at risk of being a target.
Exactly. You know, ojo que no ven, corazón que no siente. I think that's why they can also compartmentalize their feelings about it. Oh, I don't know where this goes. I'm just putting mustard and Febreze on it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, they don't want to know. They truly don't want to know. Yeah.
Mariana, someone asked, what inspired you to become a journalist?
Roberta, I was 12 years old when I decided I wanted to be a journalist, and it's sort of a silly, funny reason. You know, I grew up being, at a very young age, being very afraid of being ignorant. I would tell my mom all the time. There was at one point when I was about 9 years old, I had this huge crisis saying, Mom, I'm going to be ignorant. I'm not smart. And I want to be smarter. And then when I used to watch the nightly news with my family every night in Portugal, and I was about 12 years old. And I remember one night watching it with them and seeing all these anchors on Portuguese television talking about everything that was happening around the world. I had no idea they were reading from a teleprompter. I just thought they were geniuses. And that was the moment.
Little did you know. Little did you know
what I want to do. I want to have all this knowledge that they have. And and so that's sort of the moment I decided I wanted to be a journalist.
Information is power, and then you get to say it first.
Yeah, and it's a profession where they pay you to satisfy your own curiosity. I read that once, and it was like, yes, this is it. It's exactly how lucky I am.
This perseverance comes from way back, you know, and this curiosity, as you said, when you were 12, but when you were in Portugal, you wanted to go do a master's at Columbia University, and I think they rejected you twice.
They did. Oh, it's so heartbreaking. So
Todavía te duele.
Yeah, it does. Totally. I hate no's.
Me too.
I graduated from school in Portugal, and I knew I had this dream, which was to attend Columbia University. I wanted to do journalism in the US, and I applied the first year, and I got a no the first year, and then the second year I got a no again, and the third year I flew to New York and I knocked on the dean's door and I introduced myself, and we spent an hour talking, and that year I was accepted, and it was one of the happiest days of my life when I found out I'd been accepted. I was in the newsroom in Portugal. I was working at a TV station in Portugal at the time, and I was yelling and shouting and screaming and crying, and everybody thought that I was sick, something was wrong with me, and I was like, no, crying more, no, I got accepted, and it was incredible. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question that I was ambivalent about asking you, because you're a woman, you're a mom, you're a wife, and I think it's only asked of women, because if a man does what you do, no one asks him, have you thought about your child? Have you thought about, because after I had kids, I didn't lose the drive of pursuing this career. I didn't.
Much like men don't either, right?
So I was like, do I ask her? Do I not? Because I think it's an unfair question. I'm sure you worry, but your curiosity wins over that.
If I actually thought that something was going to happen to me, I probably wouldn't do this job. Again, there is an enormous amount of training and experience and planning that goes into place always to minimize the risk. Ultimately, what I'm trying to do, and I think I actually became even more driven after having my son, is I want to be an example for him. I want to be an example for him as if you have a dream, you can accomplish that dream. No matter if you're a woman or if you're a man or if you're whatever you are in this world, that if you are persistent and determined, you can arrive at your dream. And that is an incredibly important message. And yeah, you know what? Fathers work and mothers work as well. And I'm okay with you asking me that, Anna. But I do tell you that one thing that drives me crazy is when I am traveling around the world, wherever I am, I usually get that question, oh, you travel so much, and what do you do to your child, and who does he stay with? And I know that my husband travels also as well as a filmmaker, and he never gets that question. So that kind of drives me crazy when people, but I understand. And yeah, it's, again, hopefully I'm hoping both myself and my husband can be an example for him of hard work.
I have to tell you, the first time I traveled for work, after having my kids, I loved it. And I told my cameraman, who was a man, I said, I'm loving. I feel like I'm back. I feel like I'm dusting, I'm dusting my talent. I feel like I still got it. I feel like I'm myself again. And he's like, yeah, and it's totally fine.
Yeah, we can be several things at the same time, right? We can be mothers, we can be journalists, we can be sisters, we can be friends, we can do a lot at the same time, much like men do.
Much like men. And I didn't want to ask you the question. That's why I told you I was so angry at the idea of having to ask it. Because I'm like, well, that's not fair, because people say the same thing. My dad will say, who are the kids going to stay with? And I'm like, con el papá.
Exactly.
Who's babysitting the kids? I do stand-up comedy, and my dad's like, ay, el pobre Steve.
Steve is your husband? I love it.
Yes, el pobre Steve. And I'm like, he's okay with it. He's fine with it. These are great questions that you're having. Jim, do incidents like the beheading of the Wall Street Journal writer in Pakistan give you any pause?
Yes, absolutely. There was... So interesting that you mentioned that particular case, because I was actually in Daniel Pearl, I think you're talking about. I was actually in Syria at the time. It was early on in my career as a journalist, and I was with my then boyfriend, now husband, Darren, in Syria. Basically, I was in New York when 9/11 happened. I had just moved to New York a month before. So the events of 9/11 had a huge impact on my life. I ended up being the only Portuguese journalist or TV journalist in Manhattan that the TV station I worked for called me and asked me to go report live. I was 24 years old. I had zero experience reporting live, and I did everything and reported live, and then came down to the streets of Manhattan, first saw people looking for their loved ones. And it was the moment that I realized, okay, this is the kind of journalism I want to do, is really more in-depth, where I can contextualize what's happening around our world. So a year later, I moved to Syria. So I was actually in Syria when that happened. I remember I was reporting at the time my first story as a freelance journalist with my husband about Syrian jihadis crossing into Iraq to fight against the Americans. The war in Iraq was happening, and and remember hearing that story and then being really scared and thinking, are we doing the right thing? And we decided to stay there. There are journalists out there right now all around the world who are risking their lives and who are much braver and doing much more important work than I am. These are the local journalists, journalists in places like Mexico and all throughout Latin America and all, in so many countries in Asia, that by writing and by doing their work, they know full well they can be killed, and they're still doing it. And they're seriously the ones that deserve all the kudos and
What are the security measures you make? What are your plans of the contingencia? What are your backup plans? Because you have mentioned a couple of times, we plan it, we have these security measures, but in the show you don't see that.
Yeah, we have a committee where we do weekly security calls, usually about where we are going, what's safe and what's not safe, what we think is, risk worth taking or not. We have a plan in place, which I can't tell you too much about, but lots of plans in place for if things go wrong and they don't work. And then there's also, most importantly, I think, is the relationship that we build with the people that are allowing us into these worlds. There's months and months of talking to people. For every yes, we get dozens and dozens and dozens of no's. And there's, much like they sort of want to know as much as possible about us before they allow us into their worlds, there's a lot that goes into us knowing about them before we go into them in their worlds. Because once we're there, we are very much in their own hands, and our security is very much in their own hands. So it's about trust as well.
Chiquis is asking, and this will be the last question I'll take. What interview has been difficult or afraid of doing that interview? Which one has been the most difficult interview?
I think we did one of the episodes was about sex trafficking and pimps. I've covered and done a lot of stories on sex trafficking, and I spent a lot of time with sex trafficking victims. For this episode, because it's trafficked and the show's about black markets and the perpetrators, we wanted to spend time with pimps and traffickers themselves. And I think we contacted over 100 pimps, and in the end, only a handful, less than a handful, actually agreed to meet and talk to us. It was really, really hard. So it was hard to gain access to that world. And then it was hard once there to, again, my way of approaching journalism is with empathy and trying to understand people. And once you're hearing people, men and women, actually, you'll be surprised by watching the show, talking about other women the way they do and the things they've done and how emotionally and physically violent they have been towards women. That was a really hard one for me.
Yeah. Mariana, what's tonight's episode?
Steroids, Anna, and you have no idea, but it looks like everybody's taking steroids. That is what we found. It's insane. I mean, we spoke to suburban moms, to teenagers in
for what?
Yeah. Oh, to get stronger, to get skinnier, to look better for selfie photos that we can post on Instagram. Social media has had an enormous impact on everything, on how we look, and plastic surgery has gone off the roof, and any way, and easy, especially if it's an easy way that we can look better, feel better, people are willing to try it.
And then what time can people where can people find the episodes, what time, and how many more do we have left? What else are you going to show us?
So it's Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on National Geographic. And we have, I think, 4 or 5 more weeks left. And I hope you watch them all. I mean, the incredible thing about the show is that the variety of topics, 1 week we're covering fentanyl, the next we're doing tigers, trafficking, and now tonight it's steroids, and we have guns coming up, and a whole bunch of other super interesting shows.
That's the thing. Everyone was obsessed with Tiger King, but there is somewhere where all these animals are coming from.
Yeah, we started filming actually before Tiger King even aired. We had no idea that show was in production, but I'm happy it did, because I do think it helps our show in terms of raising awareness for the plight of tigers. So our whole show is about what is happening with tigers, not only abroad, but here in the United States. And we, again, are able to gain unprecedented access into the world of tiger trafficking.
And for people who can't watch it on TV, I watch it on the app. Is it going to be on YouTube? Is there somewhere where they can find it online?
Yes, I believe so. And most importantly, right now, it's to tune into National Geographic. But I do want to say one thing. We also have a new podcast. So it's my first podcast world. It's called Trafficked with Mariana Van Zeller. And you can find that anywhere, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts. And it drops a new episode every Thursday. And it's sort of the companion podcast to the show. And it's pretty interesting.
Oh, Mariana, I love it. I love it. What's your next project after this?
We're filming season 2 of Trafficked, which I'm excited about. You know, there's been a huge explosion of black markets during COVID. Huge.
Right, because everything is, nadie ve nada.
Yeah, because there's been an economic downturn. And whenever people lose their jobs, they're having to figure out a way to make money and bring, food back to their families. And if black markets are the only way they can do that, then people are having and sort of being forced to turn into black markets. So drugs, guns, scams, steroids, all the things we've covered, there's been a huge rise during COVID, which makes me realize that actually this is the most relevant time of all to be doing a show like ours.
It's fantastic. I know it's been hard to do it during COVID with virtual learning and the travel and the scares, but you've done a fantastic job. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Tonight in Chicago, the afternoon in the Pacific.
Exactly.
And I hope to meet you in person one day.
I hope so. I had so much fun. Thank you so much.
Likewise, te mando un abrazo. Feliz Navidad.
También, gracias.
So there you have it. Oh my God, I was fangirling because that show gets my adrenaline pumping, and then you learn absolutely so much from everything that we could fall victim to. And then you see both sides of the coin and so on and so forth. So there you have it. Tonight at 9 p.m. On National Geographic Television, the National Geographic channel. And then you can find it, as she said, you can find it on our website and so on. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on Wednesday Whine. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. Let us know what you think, and we'll see you next week, everybody.